In the pages of comic books, resurrection is so common that most people can name all of the characters who have actually stayed dead, and that list is mostly Uncle Ben. With the comic book universe making the transition to the silver screen in the MCU, we've already had a taste of death not quite taking. With all the crazy returns, it's left audiences speculating who else might cheat death and come back, so here's our picks. But before we get started, we have a brand new channel for you. It's called The Binger. Head on over there for more great movie content. Hands down, the grand champion of dying, but not really, is the god of mischief himself, Loki. The adopted Odin's son has appeared to die in not one, but two Thor movies, only to return to either menace Midgard or to rule Asgard while posing as Odin. Loki's so good at deception that his own brother doesn't believe he's actually there half the time. When it comes to dealing with Loki, it's best just to assume that he has an angle. Even if it looks like he's lost, he's playing the long game, which has made his death at the hands of Thanos so hard for fans to accept, despite the Mad Titan saying that there'd be no resurrections. See, he just doesn't know the god of mischief like we do. Fan theories about Loki's supposed death sprung up as soon as the lights went up, and we didn't get to see his smiling face again as we had in the past when he appeared to meet his maker. From posing as a duplicate to taking the form of Bruce Banner, fans are holding out hope that the MCU's most charming villain might be around to make sure the sun shines on the Odin sons again, just like he promised. While we're on the subject of fallen Asgardians, Hela made a big splash in her introduction to the MCU by getting straight to breaking her baby brother's favorite toy and getting rid of his best friends. Siblings, right? Hela turned out to be a villain so powerful, even the combined might of the Odin sons along with the Hulk and Valkyrie couldn't bring her down. In order to defeat her, they had to destroy her source of power, Asgard itself. We last saw Hela trying to stop the fire giant Surtur from destroying Asgard after the Revengers convinced the Hulk to not smash. While she might have been the most formidable opponent the God of Thunder has faced, she didn't spend much time in Thor Ragnarok actually fighting Thor. Instead, he spent most of his time on Sakaar while she wrecked shop in their homeland. Setting aside other Asgardians' ability to die and then come back, in both Norse mythology and Marvel lore, Ragnarok is a process of destruction and rebirth, all to feed the not at all creepy those that sit above in shadows. Yeah, subtle name, guys. Given that, there's a chance that Thor still might have more sister issues to work out. Avengers Infinity War had a lot of tragic moments in it, and not just those last few minutes as we watched the snap work its dark purpose across the universe. As Thanos pounded his way through the MCU, leaving destruction and sadness in its wake, we can only guess what happened to the Xandarians and the Nova Corps when Thanos dropped by to pick up the Power Stone. Judging by the destruction of the Asgardians and nowhere, it probably wasn't pretty. That path of destruction even had an effect on the Mad Titan himself. This is especially true when it comes to his favorite daughter, Gamora. Thanos had taken Gamora from her homeworld after he and the Chitauri showed up to chop the population in half and raised her alongside the long-suffering Nebula. When Thanos was told that he'd have to give up the thing he loved the most in order to get the Soul Stone, he only had one choice. Fortunately, she had come along. While she wasn't dusted, her sacrifice might still bind her with the Soul Stone or whatever other mechanism is used to unsnap the universe. Or at least we hope so, because we're not done seeing her and Peter Quill together. Of all the tragic deaths in Avengers Infinity War, Vision had a particularly heavy one. Not only is the entire Battle of Wakanda meant to give Shuri enough time to disconnect the Mind Stone from his forehead, but when that doesn't work, his girlfriend had to destroy the stone and kill Vision in the process. Then Thanos shows up with his Time Stone and rewinds the whole thing and kills Vision all over again by taking the Mind Stone out. That had to be one heck of a serious bummer. Of course, Wanda didn't have a lot of time to dwell on what happened before Thanos got to snapping and half the universe went away, including herself. Now, there's a number of pathways for Vision to return. He could get the Mind Stone back and then have his network installed sequentially like Shuri suggested. The other option for Vision's return lies in who his co-creator is. Not Tony Stark or Bruce Banner, but Ultron. One of the more menacing elements of Ultron is that every time he seems beat, he simply uploads himself into a new body. It's possible that the Jarvis program found a place to store a backup when Vision was erasing the Ultron backups. Those who manage to die without the Mad Titan ever getting involved might still find a way to cheat death. In the multiple Oscar-winning movie Black Panther, the charismatic and compelling villain Eric Killmonger chose to die rather than to live in bondage. A fitting act of symbolism to his cause to bring Wakanda into the world and then avenge the wrongs that he felt Wakanda could have prevented. It was a sad and poetic death scene, but this is superheroes and supervillains we're talking about here. Remember the Uncle Ben rule: no one stays dead. Now there's the usual pathways for Killmonger to make a comeback in the MCU. Perhaps he had planned for being defeated by infusing some form of vibranium technology in him, like the bead that saved Everett Ross's life, or maybe time travel shenanigans to undo the snap could end up cheating the Grim Reaper. Digital Spy proposed a much more satisfying way to come back through the spirit realm of Bast as the former king of Wakanda. After defeating T'Challa at the waterfall, Killmonger took the heart-shaped herb and saw his ancestors. As a former king and Black Panther, no matter how brief, he may have earned a spot in the afterlife of Bast. The story of rights and the Marvel characters is a complicated and convoluted story. Back in the dark times, Marvel sold the rights to their characters to keep the lights on. One large chunk of those rights was the mutant part of the Marvel Universe. But what happens when someone's an Avenger and an X-Men related mutant? That's the line that the Maximoff twins walk, both the scions of Magneto and powerful mutants in their own right, but also prominent members of the Avengers. This meant that for 1 year, we got two different Quicksilvers, one in the Mutantverse and one in the MCU. Quicksilver's time in the MCU was cut short, leaving the spotlight to his sister, who didn't make it into Fox's mutant-related films. Of course, that was then, and this is now. And Fox is now a part of Disney, who also owns Marvel Studios. Without the need to share custody of the Maximoff twins, maybe the Marvel Speedster might make his way back into the MCU. Of all the people on the list, Quicksilver is the most reliant on time travel shenanigans to make his way back in, and with time travel almost certainly an element in Endgame, that might be it. Things haven't been going well for the Asgardians. Since their introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've been invaded by both frost giants and dark elves, all seeking revenge after Odin defeated them so many years ago. Then the woman that helped Odin do all that conquering came back and did what the boys couldn't do: take over Asgard. While she was left duking it out with Surtur, the remaining Asgardians began to flee to Earth, only to encounter the Mad Titan on his Infinity Stone quest. Oh, Loki, if you had just left it behind, but then you wouldn't be Loki. Throughout all of this, one of the staunchest protectors of Asgard, while the heir to the throne Thor was off doing his Thor stuff, was the all-seeing Heimdall. When he used the last of his abilities to summon the Bifrost, sending the Hulk back to Earth, all he got was, a blade to his chest for his troubles. It was a tragic death in what would become a long series of tragic deaths. While there's not a lot of paths for Heimdall's resurrection, he's part of a Norse pantheon, so he also could be part of a rebirth of Asgard. Captain America's had a long time to rack up a collection of super rivals. While Red Skull might be the head of the class, there are others who'd like to see the Star-Spangled Hero go down. Now in the MCU, Captain America's rogue gallery has been toned down a little bit. While Crossbones got his full battle treatment, Helmut Zemo was stripped of his Baron title and his sweet purple sock cap and crown, and Batroc the Leaper barely even leaped before he was put away in Winter Soldier. Arnim Zola made his first MCU appearance in the first Avenger as a regular scientist working with Red Skull, making super weapons out of the Tesseract. Being captured by the OSS only led to the mad scientist being recruited by the fledgling S.H.I.E.L.D. There, he managed to do the rarest thing in comics: die of old age. He already cheated that death by having himself transferred to an enormous supercomputer where he oversaw Project Insight. While we didn't get the cyborg Zola from the comics, we got pretty close. While Zola sacrifices himself for the chance to take out Captain America and Black Widow, there's no telling if there isn't a Zola backup lurking around somewhere. While we're on the subject of downloading backups of oneself, the best in the MCU when it comes to that is, of course, the mighty Ultron. The perennial Avengers villain has been downloading and upgrading himself after defeats for decades now in the pages of the Marvel Comics. It's kind of his thing. We're used to it by now. With each upgrade, he's become more and more powerful and a constant threat to the team who helped create him in the first place. In Avengers Age of Ultron, we got a glimpse of that as Ultron sought out the rare element vibranium to give him a body that could stand up to the combined might of the Avengers, just not a full blast from the Mind Stone though, leaving us to believe that Ultron is done menacing the Avengers. But his former upgraded chassis is lacking its Mind Stone powered personality. Since Vision was also made up of Ultron, he might take the wheel once more. Then there's the red-eyed Ultron head Peter Parker found in the damaged control storage. Red eyes was the way that we were able to tell which Ultron had the primary program, so we may see Ultron return after all. You know, it's never easy to find out that your long-lost father is in fact a Celestial, one of the oldest beings in the universe, and in reality a giant brain that built a planet around itself. Oh, and he also has a plan to wipe out life in the universe and then replace it with his own creations. Peter Quill was able to sign off on most of that in order to have a father, but if there's one thing we know about Quill, it's that he doesn't take the loss of those he loves lightly. So when he found out that dear old dad's the reason for his mom's tragic passing, to remove the temptation to return to Earth, Quill took it in his usual fashion of getting really mad and started hitting stuff. Really though, you could have given them time to get the gauntlet off, Peter. Jeez. Well, thanks to Baby Groot remembering which button to push, Ego ended up on the business end of an explosion that took out the planet-sized Celestial. But Celestials are ancient and powerful beings, so it's hard to believe that one explosion can end Ego permanently, meaning we might not have seen the last of the living planet. Ronan the Accuser, the Kree Accuser who was so good at his job he became the Accuser, making his way back in the MCU in Captain Marvel. But that's because the movie takes place in the 90s, decades before he takes his ship and the Power Stone to Xandar to settle old grudges with the Nova Corps. It turns out he wasn't ready for the uneasy peace that had just been declared. Ronan was supposed to simply be a pawn in Thanos' Infinity Stone collection game that ended up wiping out half the population of the universe. Unfortunately for the Mad Titan, good help is hard to find, and Ronan was more than willing to use the Power Stone for his own purposes, which forces the Guardians of the Galaxy to step in and stop him. This involved a showdown, a dance-off, and Peter Quill barehanding the Power Stone. This isn't something a mortal is supposed to be able to do, but of course, Quill's half Celestial. Ronan's then dispatched with the power of the Power Stone. As we saw with Red Skull and the Space Stone, the stones might have other plans for those consumed by a passion for them. Parents are a big motivator for a lot of superheroes and supervillains. It can even get a pair of fighting superheroes to set aside their differences if the name is right, apparently. For the Odin sons, they just want to be worthy of their parents, who happen to be the rulers of the magical realm of Asgard. Loki's whole plot in the first Thor movie was to invite the Frost Giants to invade Asgard during Odin's sleep, so he could betray them, save Asgard, and then win his dad's love. Do they just put Odin in front of everything that Odin does? As usual, Loki's plans are complicated. The death of his mom Frigga is enough to motivate him to put aside his differences with his hammer-wielding sibling to take on the Dark Elves. With the passing of both Odin and Frigga, Thor's now on his own to lead the remaining Asgardians that Valkyrie was able to save from the wrath of Thanos. Like with Killmonger and the Vast Afterlife, it appears that Odin can appear to his son in times of need to give him advice, and Frigga might even be the one to take Loki out of the afterlife as well. In his role as hype man and street preacher for the philosophy of Thanos, Ebony Maw turned out to be a formidable opponent all on his own. Facing down Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Wong, and eventually Spider-Man, he was still able to get his prize. Specifically, he was after the Eye of Agamotto and the Time Stone contained within. But as the Sorcerer Supreme explains, simple binding spells are difficult to break, so Maw took the whole package. It wasn't until the stowaway Peter Parker remembered how the best movie in the Alien franchise ended. No, not the forklift thing. The other thing, the sucking out in space part, that Maw was defeated and Doctor Strange was freed at last. When Thanos finds out about the death of Ebony Maw, he seems genuinely taken aback for once. Of course, he had just thrown his favorite daughter off a cliff to get the Soul Stone, so he was in a reflective mood when he says that the day has taken its toll. For most, the vacuum of space is fatal, unless you're the sister of a Jedi Knight or a Norse god or whatever the heck Ebony Maw is. Space will be your downfall. The Ancient One has had a pretty good run. You don't get a name like the Ancient One by dying young. No one seems to know how long she's been alive, but during the events of Doctor Strange, we get as far as her vision goes. From a Sorcerer Supreme, that means she knew when she was going to pass away. It turns out the secret to her long life was to drain a little bit of power from the Dark Dimension, which might be where Caecilius got the idea that the Dark Dimension was the secret to immortality. Either way, it's a bargain that was too much for her student Mordo. We'll see that guy again for sure. But what about the Ancient One? As we've seen, mentors have frequently found a way to return to their pupils in the MCU, whether it's through spirit realms or visions. The Ancient One was someone with so many secrets, including her longevity. She might have a trick or two left up her sleeve that could bring her back into the good doctor's life, whether it's through the astral plane or by the manipulation of yet another part of the multiverse. There are plenty of avenues that the Ancient One might use to come back in some way. One of the saddest love stories in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the one between Steve Rogers and Agent Peggy Carter. The agent and the superhero never got to have their promised dance when Captain America had to force Red Skull's plane full of weapons down in the Arctic to save mankind, turning himself into a popsicle. While he ended up frozen and later revived by S.H.I.E.L.D. in the 21st century, Agent Carter lived her life without the Star-Spangled Hero. Cap even got a little misty-eyed when his first thought after he was revived almost 70 years later was that he missed his date. Aw, Cap. It's still weird that you kissed her niece though. We know that some of our original Avengers aren't going to make it out of Endgame, with various stars multi-picture deals coming to an end. With Chris Evans' Captain America on the top of that list, we'd like to see the first Avenger get a fitting send-off. With time travel a likely component of Endgame, what better way to do that than to finally give Rogers and Carter that stolen dance they never got to have. But before you go, we just have one question for you. Do you love to binge watch movies and TV shows? Because if so, we have a brand new channel for you called The Binger. Head on over there for more great videos like this one. And those were some of the dead characters that might come back in the MCU. What MCU characters would you like to see make a big comeback? Are there any that you don't want to see? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos. Thanks for watching.